Let's get it out of the way right now. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 for the PS5 is hands down the best comic book video game of all time. Now, of course, yes, opinions are subjective. Some of you guys might be loving the Batman Arkham trilogy still, or maybe the first Spider-Man game is personally your favorite, or maybe if you want to throw it all the way back to Marvel Ultimate Alliance, or maybe even Injustice 2. There's been countless amazing comic book games that have come out, and for me, though, Spider-Man is my favorite superhero of all time. And the first PS4 Spider-Man game from Insomniac was incredible. I loved it. It was personally my favorite comic book game when that came out, but I knew there was things that they could have easily rearranged or done better. And Miles Morales was fantastic as well, but everything that I wanted is in this game. In fact, I don't even think that this is the best video game adaptation of like any comic book ever. This is hands down, I think, the best adaptation that we've ever gotten of Spider-Man since some of the early comic book days. This includes the movies, this includes the TV shows, this includes anything else that you can possibly say out there. I don't know if I'll get into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse because that's so way out there. I still think that's like the best stuff when it comes down to the multiverse and Miles Morales itself. But when it comes down to Peter Parker and diving into his long-ranging rogue gallery, this game accomplished stuff that I was not expecting, and also just things that I didn't think they would be able to. For a shorter runtime of the first game, I was a little bit worried that how they were going to intersect Kraven, the Black Suit, Venom, and all of those natures, and every single thing in here, while my jaw continued to drop, just absolutely had me shocked, but feeling well earned, and not just like, oh my god, this is happening, but actually feeling earned in its rights for character moments and specifically people and just things that show up. And again, I'm trying to be vague on that. This will be a non-spoiler review, but also a spoiler review. And for people who are clicking on this who are like, you don't really talk about video games, I do usually over on my second channel, Critics Play Games, but I am going to start doing a little bit more video game content over here on this channel as well, because this is Zach Pope Reviews. We review movies, TV, and now, of course, video games. And to kick this off, I had to start out with Spider-Man 2 for the PS5, and I thought this is just going to be a worthy one. I'm sure many of you guys have already started playing through it. I will warn you when we do get into spoilers, that will be the back half of this video because I'm not making a separate video. We got to talk about it in this video too. But I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section, so make sure to leave your thoughts down below, hit that like and subscribe button, and again, let's just keep talking Spider-Man down there. So, flat out, let's get all the juicy goodness out of the way. So this game's story, because that's the main reason that I played this game. Yes, it's awesome to swing around and have that gameplay, and we're going to talk about the gameplay, but my main thing nowadays when I go in to play a video game is coming down to the story. I don't have a lot of time to do a lot of these open world games, nor to even dive into like countless multiplayer games. I used to be a giant Call of Duty fanatic. Still play them every year, but I'm not as versed into them anymore. And for me, with this game, I wanted a brilliant story that jumped off Miles Morales and the original Spider-Man game that Insomniac made. And Insomniac, for me, is the second best studio at PlayStation, but they possibly are the best studio for exclusives for the PlayStation and just in general. When it comes down to the PlayStation 5, I would go as far to say that they have had the two best next-gen games yet across any consoles. That's Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart and now Insomniac's Spider-Man 2. And you can very much tell that it is pushing the power of the PS5 to that next level. But Insomniac, what it does on a story level and in understanding the character of Peter Parker and even Miles Morales, who I liked Miles when he was introduced, and I really liked him a little bit more in the game. But this is the game that actually started to make me love this version of Miles Morales. I think he's tied just as great as the Into the Spider-Verse Miles Morales. But of course, far and few out, you have to do both their storylines at the same time. But I think we can all agree that this is definitely more of a Peter Parker story. Peter Parker is, of course, the main character in here, and basically, Harry Osborn comes back, Kraven the Hunter starts showing up to take down villains and hunt down everyone in New York City, and Peter Parker gets the symbiote suit, and, well, becomes Bully Maguire once again. And I think for me, that's basically all we knew going into this. And we knew Venom shows up somehow, some way, shape, and form. We didn't know who Venom was. I know who Venom is now. But we knew all these things were going to happen. We knew these possibilities. And as excited as I was going into this game, I was very worried. I'm like, how are you going to balance two different Spider people? How are you going to give MJ development? How are you going to build off what the last two games did? How are you going to have all these other side characters alongside also bringing in Kraven the Hunter, all of his hunters, and of course then bringing in Venom? And I'm not going to lie, there was a point in the game I thought I was almost done, and I'm like, where's Venom? Like, no spoilers, but Venom does not show up until he's needed to. And that's what I loved about this. Now, we can go in for days and days on how we feel on the Sony cinematic universe that they're developing with the Kraven the Hunter movie coming out next year. We obviously know that they have 2 Venom films. They're making another one right now. Just to kind of give a point of reference, Venom is one of my favorite comic book characters of all time. I think he's one of the most unique. I love the symbiote. I think there's so much vastness to that all. And Kraven the Hunter is, for me, one of the best Spider-Man villains that has never appeared in live action thus far. Obviously, we have a trailer, but I didn't know how you were going to balance those two, bring them in here. Obviously, you could be like, oh, Kraven wants to hunt Venom or something like that, and I thought it could be very cliche, but the avenues that it takes with the Kraven the Hunter storyline and understanding the character of Kraven and making new nuances to it, because, of course, this is their take on these characters. That's always something that I love, is the take on this and how they take things from the comic books or the shows and mix it and intersplice it perfectly into their lore of Spider-Man without feeling it or making it feel betrayed. And I found that this story not only contained some great callbacks to the comics, to some movies, to the TV shows that you're just gonna ooze and awe and smile. And if you're a giant Venom fan and the symbiote fan, there's countless different things that if you don't do the side stuff to, you would never even discover. But also alongside that, it's the Kraven the Hunter storyline they do here, and the way that they balance out how he is used, how Kraven is developed, why he is hunting. I love all of that. And on top of that, the collectibles in here, I found some of the collectibles in the first game to be a little bit of annoying, and I just did it for the platinum, but in this one, it actually felt that all the collectibles, while some can be a little bit tedious, they all went towards something in this world to add more lore, to add more to the characters, such as Kraven the Hunter, such as, of course, the symbiote. And I love how they're able to dive into that and add this. Like, again, this whole entire subplot with this fire cult went in a direction that I was not expecting. And by the time it had ended, I was like, holy shit, that's brilliant. And for me, it just only adds more to this world, a world that feels so fleshed out and lived in, that obviously, like, if you went around it, there's so many Easter eggs to Doctor Strange, the Sanctum Sanctorum's in there, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever has an embassy there. The Nelson and Murdoch is not there anymore, though, so that's interesting. But of course, you have like references to the Fantastic Four, the Avengers Towers there, all these different things that build out this world, but it's these little things that add lore to this world of Spider-Man that I love, and I always love seeing different interpretations being lived in, because that's a huge part of when you're touching on these aspects, is how lived in do these worlds feel. And the fact that Insomniac is tackling Wolverine next, I cannot wait to see the story that they tell there, and what characters could possibly show up in there to further out Wolverine's story. Because every character, every usage, every single person that shows up in Spider-Man 2 only increases the stakes, the excitement, but the emotion of every single thing going on. And again, I have to acclaim that as a pinnacle for the studio, I think this is one of Insomniac, if not their best video game they've ever made. On a storytelling capability, you are completely enwrapped into the story that I cannot wait for New Game Plus to come out so I can dive into this game once again on the hardest difficulty and play the shit out of it, because this is the type of game that you want to be invested in. This is the type of game that you want to be excited about, and it's, for me, one that just continues it all. And again, going to Miles Morales, who I think has a lot of great moments in here, coming into his own as Spider-Man. We saw a little bit of that in the side game of how he had to deal and handle the city on his own. But in here, there's more to it, and how he has to help his friend Peter, his mentor, after he gets the black suit, and what happens with that. Bully Maguire stuff, of course, but I really loved how they handled the symbiote. I thought that was just fantastic. And again, like I mentioned, I'm a huge Venom fan, so I was really happy with that all. And the other thing they did a really great job on was handling Harry Osborn. Now, I am in like the minority when it comes down to this. Harry and MJ are like just not my favorite characters from the comics. I think the movies honestly have not really handled them well whatsoever. This goes over to the Raimi films. I think sometimes they're just annoying, and I like the MJ that we have in the Homecoming trilogy, and we obviously haven't gotten Harry there, but Harry Osborn for me has just always been kind of a whiny brat. I like him in the comics, and then when it comes down to MJ, I don't really feel enough for her. This version of MJ I really liked in the first PS4 game, and I really like her here. And I think everything to the relationship just feels so earned and welcomed. And the same thing goes down to Harry Osborn, of course, too. They really built out Peter's relationship with Harry so well. And again, balances everything, but never feeling like a single mission feels wasted with filler. Everything just builds out these characters more and more, and I loved it. And again, that's a worry because the first game did not build up. So you have to build up Harry Osborn on top of everything else going on. It's great. And they do take their time to give you missions that are smaller based, like going to Coney Island and playing carnival games. Like that's one of the best missions in this entire game, just for the subtlety that you get to spend time with the characters. I love it. I love how they're able to touch into that. And again, can't really talk much more about the story. We'll bring that back up in a second. But I want to dive into the gameplay. Gameplay's fantastic. Swinging around has never felt better. I actually really like the web wings. I've always liked the look of them. I used to have these pajamas with like web wings under it. It was like one of my favorite things to sleep in as a kid. But I've never, I love the swinging, and I didn't know how it was going to feel, but I loved playing around, going super fast through these, wind tunnels, and flying upwards and jumping into a swing. It always feels so satisfying. And it'll make you never want to go back and play the original Spider-Man game because you're so obsessed with them. And the same thing goes for the combat. It's very much basically the same. There's a parry option that I think works sort of well. I think some of the notifications of when to use it could have been a little bit better, but again, I'm more here for the story and I'm more here for the excitement that I get there. And on top of that, just kind of moving a little bit more forward, I really love how great the graphics look in here, and specifically how the game just plays. This is, again, a full-on next-gen title. I have 120 frames per second Hertz TV, I guess that's the correct thing, for an LG OLED, and it can run this thing at 120 frames per second, and it looks phenomenal. I played around with that, and I played around with the photo mode a lot. I never touched the photo mode, but I took countless pictures, specifically when Venom was entangled, because, like I mentioned, I love the character of Venom. I think with that said, though, I think I need to give my score and jump into spoilers. So, yeah, Spider-Man 2 is the best comic book game of all time. I think when it comes down to story, developing characters under the mask, over the mask, when they're wearing the mask, doesn't matter. You're developing Peter Parker and Spider-Man and Miles Morales and Spider-Man, of course, all with inside there. MJ, the same thing. The MJ missions in here were actually a lot better than the original one. I wasn't finding myself rushing through them. Did they kind of halt the pacing sometimes? Sure, but there's only like 3 of them and they never dragged for me. Thank God. The original ones were boring. And on top of that, the way that they handled the characters was just fantastic. I think they give more rights. They have just the nice little amount of it all. And of course, there are 2 post-credit scenes. One that leaves me intrigued, but a second one that makes me go, holy shit, they're bringing that in. Which is unique, to say the least. So, with that said, I'm going to give this game a 10 out of 10. It's the best comic book game ever made. Yeah, I'm very, very headstrong on that thought. So now, spoiler warning, spoilers. There's a couple things I want to talk about, of course, to just end this video on. If you have not finished the game, almost to 100%, you have been warned. First off, let's talk about the Fire Cult. What? That's Cassidy? Cletus Cassidy? The second I saw the symbiote that he got and I saw the red, it all clicked right there. Then the symbols on there, you have the absolute carnage and all this stuff. I know I'm getting into nerd territory, but that is exciting. So my guess for that is Unless there's a mission I missed and it just didn't pop up yet as me playing, maybe that's the case, and maybe Carnage is in the game. My guess is, if we were to follow the trend of how this works, the next game would be another Miles Morales focused in-between game. And that, I would be shocked, is him. And then, of course, the end credit scene is Silk, Cindy Moon showing up, which is great. We didn't get to see her face, but we know that's in there. And I would imagine it's Miles Morales now having to train Silk and them dealing with Carnage. I do not see Carnage being the main villain in the next game, specifically because they've already dealt with the symbiote, or it's an add-on. They do DLC, and Carnage is like a DLC villain. Now, some people might be disappointed in that, like, oh, they're just going to use Carnage for that. I think it works because I feel like this whole second game really much feels like the symbiote story that they wanted to tell. Obviously, Peter now has the anti-venom suit, which is fantastic. I was wondering how they were going to bring us back in a storyline to let us keep using the symbiote power, and that was phenomenal. I loved it. I loved everything they did with Martin Lee, and of course, Miles Morales as well. That was just beautiful and touching and excellent. And again, the way that it ties into Peter getting to keep the symbiote was great as well and felt well earned. I wasn't expecting that. I honestly just thought at the end of the game they were going to be like, here's the symbiote powers again, you know, just go on and do whatever you want. But I think this felt even more well earned than I expected, and I felt like I loved how they touched that into the story. But I feel like the symbiote story is basically done here. Maybe they do Null. Like, I was starting to think that I might be mispronounced that, but Knull. The god or the creator of them. I could see them doing that for like a third game if they did want to do the symbiotes again. I just don't see how you bring back Venom, which is curious because I really want a Venom game because you get to play as Venom for a small sequence, and it very much reminded me of the Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction game, if you ever played that, like heavily for that. But it was one of the best sequences in there, and that moment, like when you're just thrashing and killing, was great. But as much as I would want a spin-off, if the story is not there for it, I don't want it. And I think that's where I just go as far to say is that there's so many different avenues they can do, and I'm happy to see Insomniac is not just jumping on these spinoffs and making, oh, you know, we're going to do a Silk spinoff, we're going to do a Venom spinoff. Like, there needs to be story there before you actually jump into it. And I think that's why they picked Wolverines, because they had a story to tell. That's why the Avengers are not showing up. That's why Doctor Strange is not showing up, which I genuinely thought he was going to show up for that entire Black Cat and Miles Morales mission, which was one of the best missions in the entire game. But, like, when you look at everything, I see this game going into more. I think Green Goblin will be the next villain going forward. It seems like that's kind of the way the G serum. I think you finish out that entire storyline. But the way that the kind of creators have talked about it is that it seems like, you know, if they said this was their Civil War, what would be next? It'd be Infinity War. It'd be Endgame. Like that would be their whole capability. So if you were to do an Endgame situation with Spider-Man, I would imagine you would do Spider-Verse type stuff, which they've hinted at with the collectibles in here too. So do you have like Miles, Silk, Peter versus like Carnage, or like, again, maybe Venom shows back up somehow, shape, and form? I don't think they will. I genuinely got my satisfaction with Venom in this world. But then you have Green Goblin. Do you have Null show up? Do you have like these other symbiotes show up? Do you have like a army? There's so many symbiotes that they could jump through, but I don't know if it would feel satisfying story-wise. It feels Green Goblin is the satisfying take to go next. And I would love that. I really hope that's their end game with this. And, you know, there's a lot of great things because we didn't just get to see the anti-Venom suit or Venom himself. And, of course, Carnage being hinted at, which I really think will be DLC. We got to see Scream. That was, like, the biggest surprise of this game for me, was Scream. You get to see MJ turn into Scream, and that was, like, one of the toughest boss battles. Which, speaking of the boss battles, every single one in here is great. The opening boss battle with Sandman is such a great introduction to this game. I openly sobbed and was excited throughout that entire sequence. Like, I was just jaw-dropped. And then the rest of the game, like, you have the Scream fight, you have the Venom fight, you have the Kraven fight, you have Miles versus Peter. The lizard fight was awesome too. I mean, the list goes on and on with all the incredible and amazing boss battles in here, which are such a stand-up from the last one, which just felt so repetitive, which this one, yeah, you can make the argument, it's a beat 'em up, you beat 'em up and you do things, but adding in the parry, which again, I didn't love, I think it could have been better, does add to a whole new dynamic of how you have to dodge. And it just, again, continues to go on and on of why this game is so perfect, why you get all those exciting moments, why you get all these character developments, and all the moments feel earned. The Scream moment felt earned. Harry turning into Venom felt earned. Their betrayal, and then Harry being revived right at the end felt earned as well. And then the Carnage moment and the side quest felt earned, and Wraith, Yuri felt earned, and the anti-Venom suit, all this sorts of things, and the Kraven fight between Venom and Venom ending up killing Kraven was great, because that's what Kraven wanted. Kraven wanted someone to kill him. He didn't want to die from cancer. He wanted to die on the hunt, which kind of weirdly feels emotional. Like, there's so many of these running parallels between everything, and then for the game to end with Peter kind of semi-retiring and Miles Morales taking over as Spider-Man does, again, feel earned. We all know Peter Parker will be back, though. I love it. And the final moment of Goblin going to visit Dr. Octavius, it's very interesting to see where they're tying into that. I was wondering when Octavius was going to come back into here. This game was everything I wanted. And when I talk about video games, I am very much more just rambling and ranting my thoughts, because there's so much that can happen in them, and so many different things, and so many exciting moments that this is exactly what I want, though. I want things to feel earned, and I want things to feel so great. The suits are fantastic. I basically played as the Andrew Garfield suit the entire time, but I can't wait to play this game again. Thank you so much again, guys, for watching this again. 10 out of 10, best comic book game ever made. I cannot wait to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section. If you enjoy video game reviews, well, let me know. I'll keep doing more. There's a lot of video games that I love talking about, and I usually have relegated more to the second channel. But with the second channel, I usually find myself only having time for one channel thus far, so I definitely want to start talking more over here. And again, I talk movies and TV over here on a daily basis. This is just the central hub for nerd culture, and I can't wait to have you guys here. So, of course, until next time, stay classy.